Welcome to this episode of the Voices for Voices TV show and podcast. I am your host, founder, and executive director of Voices for Voices, Justin Allen Hayes. From the time I can remember, uh, music has been a powerful, strong influence in my life. And now with research backing it up, that from the time uh, we're in our mother's belly, that we are able to hear, uh, we're able to hear tones, conversation, obviously not understanding that, because we're just starting to develop as uh, as a child, as we aren't even born at that point. Uh, and so it's well known as parents to play music, whether that's classical music, calming music, uh, for the child to be uh, to be calming and influence, and then obviously conversations, even as an adult, having a quieter conversation versus a a loud conversation, uh, that can be helpful. And music, from, again, the very long time ago, since I can really remember, has really impacted me personally. And so that's why we're talking about that in this episode. That's why we want to share and bring to light, for me specifically, because it has been such a driver at so many different key points, in my life. Again, from when I can remember. And if we just think back to a newborn child, one of the things that we do, is to play calming, nursery rhyme type music, to calm a child, to help a child fall asleep, to take that stress level. Obviously, if the child's hungry or thirsty, and in that, the music isn't going to have quite the big impact. But uh, all other things being equal, the music really can and does. I even think with my daughter, so many of the toys have, as she's growing up, have sound, have music. And I think back to the time when she was growing in my wife's belly, that the music that we would that we would play, and even the reading of stories, uh, again, just that calming effect. And I really notice, as a new dad, how uh, how quickly my daughter took to my voice, uh, in the early days, the early months, the early years, even now. how important that is. And it's almost like you can see her zone in a little bit and think to herself, well, maybe not thinking to herself, maybe more of a subconscious thing of, I've heard that voice before. I've heard that voice before. And that's where, we talk about the sound of music and that importance. So in my life, from as early as I can remember, music was introduced to me first in church, really. Go to mass, and then there was the organ. Sometimes there was a guitar, as well as singing to accompany that, along with the prayers and recitations. Yeah, so that was something that really stuck with me, even so much that many years ago, 43 right now, but in my formative years as I was just growing up, one of the cantors, one of the singers, soloists, that I remember from way back when, had such just a powerful influence when I was at church, when she would sing, that I wanted her to be able to participate when my wife and I were married. And that, excuse me, very, very same church. And right there's a connection. Many years goes by, but in my mind, my mind's eye, in my memory bank, we'll call it, I remember that voice, and I remember, the one specific song, Alleluia, that she would sing in a certain manner. It was just real powerful, and I was just like, you have hairs on, your arm, just in your back, like lifting up, like, oh wow, this is something special. So that was really the first time that, as I reflect, that music really came into my life. And so that was church music. And then when we talk about and think about music outside of church that we might hear on the radio or may hear on now, uh, like a Spotify or an Apple, uh, instead of, we had at that point when I was growing up, we had what they call the Walkman, and so there was a tape that would go into this little cassette, and it would close, and then there'd be a button for play, there'd be a button for pause, and I think there was a button for rewind and maybe fast forward, and then I think there was an eject button too. So when you wanted to switch out a tape, you could do that. Uh, and so the music, I guess that I was drawn to was upbeat. We'll call it. Uh, they incorporated many different instruments, not just one, not just a guitar, not just a vocalist, but a guitar, a bass, a piano, uh, violin, and the strings were added. That had such a profound influence of just bringing things together at an orchestra level. And so those were the types of bands that at first I was drawn to. And I remember one of my very very first concerts, and so I was kind of taking that step from just that listening, either at home or the skating rink was big when I was growing up, and we'd go skating, and there'd be songs that I would recognize there as well. But actually going to a concert, seeing a performer, listening to them was something new. And the first two performances that I remember, the first one, my dad, now he has passed. However, I remember watching, I believe it was on the old VH1. The they would have kind of the behind the music or the unplugged, and Phil Collins was playing and singing on this particular episode. I don't know what it was about the episode. I don't know what it was. I don't know what song it was, but something was really drawing me closer to the music, whether that was following the beat in my mind or the different they call them riffs. So what chords they play for guitar or any instrument would have it. And so that really did two things at the time. One, when I found out that Phil Collins was coming to Cleveland, which was it was Gund Arena at the time, the arena that's now Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. I wanted to go. I wanted to go to the concert, and at the time I didn't have a job, and I can't remember if I was driving age or not, because I may have been, because my mind's a little foggy, but I'm thinking that I told my parents, like, I'm gonna go regardless if no if I can't find somebody to go with me. And my sister at the time, that wasn't really the music that she liked, and obviously we all have different tastes and artists that we like, and so my dad ended up going with me to the concert, and it was so cool. My first concert, we had really great seats. Thinking back to how much those had to have cost. Coming from lower middle class, if not even lower than that. How much money had to be saved to purchase the tickets and then to actually go. To think about it, it really, is, makes me emotional. Thinking about that, especially with Dad in heaven now. So, the first part, the concert, and of how that behind the music with Phil Collins touched me, impacted me. So we went to the concert. We had seats that were pretty close to the stage. It was one of these circular stages that rotated at a slow speed, so that because they had a huge band, lots of instruments, which is another reason I loved it, as I mentioned. And so we were able to see as the stage was turning, and so that was another new thing. I was thinking a static stage, either a triangle or some type of a shape that stays put. Well, we get to the show, and we had my dad and we had I believe we had aisle seats. If not an aisle seat, we had aisle seats because I don't remember anybody sitting next to us to where the steps were. And so the entrance of a performer is something that is always interesting. And this is what probably started it for me. And what that was is, the lights go out, some music, some beats start playing, and everybody's cheering and wondering, where Phil Collins is at. Where is he going to, rise up onto the stage? How's that going to happen? And sure enough, and you can't make these things up, the aisle right next to in our row, there was a spotlight that came down, and we looked up. So we were probably maybe 5 rows from the floor level, and so we saw the spotlight, and we literally turned just to our right, and obviously there's a spotlight, and here comes the gentleman. He's got a suit coat, a hat, a microphone, and here's Phil Collins walking through the crowd all the way up to the stage, and he had his, security and with him. And at the time, you don't know what to I didn't know what to expect in general. So when that actually happened, I was like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. And this was at a time when cell phones really weren't around, so they're to try to take a picture, take a video, and all that. It was one of these moments that was and still is instilled in my mind, and that was awesome. The concert was awesome. Phil played just about every instrument. And he played the drums, he played guitar for a song, and he played a bass, played the keyboard. Uh, it was just so awesome, just as watching a true musician. The fact that he was able to play so many instruments, it was really just set that stage. And then the second part, being there with my dad, and right, so there's songs that are playing, people are having a good time, they're clapping and cheering, and kind of doing the dance. The Trump YMCA dance wasn't really a thing yet. It was quite a many years prior to that, and to see my dad truly just having a good time, and he was dancing, and I was just kind of a little bit embarrassed, but I was like, this is so cool. He's having such a great time. I'm having such a great time. What a first concert experience for this to happen. It was just it was very, very impactful. So much so, I I remember the definitely the the entrance, which was just incredible. The instruments that Phil played, being there with my dad, him taking hard-earned money that he could have spent on other things for our family, and that was the one of the things at the time that he chose to spend money on. And again, it was the seats weren't inexpensive; they were really really great seats, and uh, it was just a all around fun time. So I gotta see how much time we have, right? Because we don't want to go over our time. Okay, we have. So we're working on a new camera right now, so that's why I'm doing that. So it looks like we have about 8 minutes or so to close out this episode. This is actually going to turn into 2 episodes because of the content we have, and which is it's fun to think about. It's fun to think back. I assume my dad was alive, and when we were able to kind of share in that bond of father son, being able to just be together, having some great music, and as I mentioned, to see Phil walking down the steps through the crowd, obviously not knowing before that was going to happen, that when it did, it was all the more special. And it really gave me a profound sense of a true musician. A musician can be an individual that plays one instrument or many instruments. For me, an artist or an individual that's able to play more than one instrument is just, it kind of blows my mind in a sense, because each instrument's just a little bit different. There's some similarities too with rhythm, but if you're playing a violin, you got a bow that you're playing the violin. If you're playing the drums, you have the drumsticks. You have the guitar. You have, it could be an acoustic guitar. It could be electric. It could be acoustic electric. It could be 6-string. It could be 12-string. A bass could be 4. It could be more set up like a guitar to look like, or it could be like the old school bass that the orchestras have. And so that was just so cool to see that in person. We have so much auto tune affecting voices and in that, and there are songs that I do like where the individual is just a singer. It might not play an instrument, but I really have that true appreciation when somebody is able to play multiple instruments, because that takes just so much talent to be able to do that. I play the guitar a little bit. I play the easy chords, the ones you just kind of learn at the beginning of learning to play a guitar. So I'm nowhere near a soloist and being able to belt out, Sweet Child of Mine and the solo that comes with it, among others. So it's just really incredible how I'm here 25, 30 years later, and I remember that time with my dad at the Phil Collins concert, and how I tied it back to that Behind the Music or the Unplugged. I'm not sure the exact name of the show, but it was, he was sitting down, and the band members, they were sitting down, and there was a small audience there. And they was